So let's get started. So just to get the crowd vibe here, how many web developers are here? Did you do it? Oh, nice, awesome. The rest of you guys are game developers, right? Game programmers. Okay, then I guess this is much more targeted to you guys. But I like to have a chat with you guys as well because I'm kind of a noob to web development as well. So, okay, so moving on. So a quick intro. I've been around for 9 years. I started my job at Gameloft doing Java ports. I took a stab at Unity way back with 2007. One of the first Unity developers, and I worked for a couple of indie game companies. One of my prominent game is Covers as Aliens and Smurfs. Um, they kind of did very well, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, you can look up and the Google should be fine. A short, quick intro about the company that I work for right now. We are an indie studio from Chennai. We are kind of a misfits since we are self-powered, not self-invested. Sorry, self-invested. We kind of like explore a lot of ideas. We try to do things a little bit differently. We got pretty popular for the Geo feature phone device that was a huge hit recently, right? One of those platforms that we explored. In most cases, this talk could be using that as a case study. It's all in our website. Go and have a look at it. You'll find who we are and what we do. Before that, I think I'll play a quick trailer of our company DevReel for the last year.
Everything owes its existence solely, completely to sound.
Thank you. Thank you. So as you can see, we have done a couple of stuff from all the way from some serious 3D stuff, some Unity stuff, Unreal stuff, and also all the way to HTML5 games, which we kind of like got famous for. So moving on. So what do you want to take away from this talk is basically you'll get started with HTML5. I'll give you the 101 on what we learned and the pitfalls, the pros and the cons of actually doing HTML5 development. The worst case, you walk out this door appreciating whatever platform that you're already working for. Probably it would be Unity or Unreal or whatever tools that you've already been working for. The idea is to give you guys a perspective on the game development as such. Okay. So yes, there are other engines out there than Unity and Unreal. We kind of like figured that out eventually, and usually people get into debates on which one is better. Like this YouTube is filled with them. Like, don't worry about it. So whenever you pick a game, right, you pick the game engine shouldn't define your game. That's the actual motto. You should pick a tool that works best for your game and best for your platform rather than being limited by your own engines. In most cases, Unity does provide that. But in some cases, in rare cases, you might want to like step out of your comfort zone and try out different things. And the worst thing is you actually learn something and also kind of appreciate what you already have. But that being said, in our studio, we still use Unity as our bread and butter. It's our everyday go-to tool, right? So a little case study on how we ended up here is one day, just Hellman's. I don't know how many guys are aware of it. They make a good mayonnaise in the States. They contacted us and they wanted to make a Snapchat game. So we were like, okay, that's easy. And they said, just the egg needs to drop from the sky and you just need to catch it. This is like basic game development, right? Oh yeah, yeah. And they gave a month, and we were like, sweet, we can do this in an hour and get paid, awesome. But there was a catch. They were like, no WebGL. And we're like, what? And like, but we only have Unity that gives us WebGL, right? So what ended up happening, since we signed the project, we were like, oh shit, we need to do this, right? So we jumped in, we started to research on a lot of stuff, and we ended up doing in Fraser. And first 2 months, or sorry, first 2-3 weeks, we were just R&Ding stuff. Only by the last 1 week, we finally finished the game and shipped to them, and they were pretty happy. Everyone was happy. But this actually led to a new venture. So Reliance also called us. They were like, we want to like ship this device, which is very limited. It's a smart device, but it's extremely low on memory, and you don't get any of the graphics calls. And since we already experienced this one, we were like, okay, we'll do it. And why haven't other guys done it? And they were saying nobody's willing to do this because everybody is comfortable with Unity at this point. So we were like, okay, we'll do it. It's not going to be a problem. So we went there and we saw this device. It was, I think now it's all over the place. I think they have around like 10 million users at this point, which is quite a lot. The other catch for us was Play Store was pretty crowded and iOS was pretty crowded, and this was like an wild west for us. It was like an open target. It was like, okay, nobody's making games here, and we have 10 million users. We need to like take this opportunity and try something different, right? Which we ended up doing. The overall process was fun. So if you guys have questions on what the difference between a HTML5 canvas and WebGL is, WebGL kind of like constructs on the same basics of an OpenGL on OpenES. It has graphics called right in the between. On the other hand, canvas is basically a bunch of HTML elements put together, right? They do run inside one canvas, but it works on the same basis. So the downside was it didn't have any hardware acceleration. So if you're going to push something as heavy as physics systems on a canvas, chances are your device is not going to handle it unless and until it's something as a really good smartphone, right? That being said, we have most of the devices do handle this one, but there are other feature devices that's coming out. Something like a Geo device, which runs on Kai OS, if you guys are familiar with that. It's basically an abandoned project from Mozilla, Fire OS. It got abandoned. These guys picked it up and they developed and they made like 20 million devices of it. So we need to target that as well. The other possible target would be Facebook Messenger and Snapchat devices. Okay, so how many game engines are out there for HTML5? There's tons. I'm not going to like evangelize on using Fraser at this point because it worked for us. Not necessarily it's going to work for you guys, but there's a bunch of options. Take a good look at Impact.js was a decent one. Pixie.js was pretty decent. And there's a bunch of out there. We picked Fraser for certain reasons, basically because it was open source. We had all the rights to modify it and had a very good community, less assholes there, and they were like ready to help us a lot. A very good, decent documentation. It's the Fraser 3.1 doesn't have much of documentation, but Fraser 2 still does. In most cases, it works. And very good examples out there. So in most cases, chances are if you're going to make a game based on simple mechanics, those examples already gets you addressed. It has a very tiny footprint, and size does matters when you're trying to go for smaller devices or picking up a platform that is requiring you to load things faster, and especially you've already been hogged with so many assets to load, right? So switching to JavaScript for us, if you're a game developer, you when you do an immediate switch from Unity or Unreal C++, it's going to seem like in Wild Wild West. Dynamic program seemed like still does like magic for us. We don't know where are the classes, where are the objects. Everything happens so many stuffs and so many layers. One object can be different from another object even though they're from the same class, right? So these were interesting for us. The web development is still a wild west. Nobody gets to dictate how and which direction it goes. Yes, Google does to an extent, but people still control this area, and like we get a new sheriff every day. That's also good. That's good for us as a consumer and developers, right? When you're switching between a platform, that you get more choices at this point. The other like quick note was, I don't know why it's called JavaScript. It's like technically called ECMAScript. That's what I figured out after a while. ECMA 6 has a very good standard of coming close to the traditional programming standards like classes and extending from different classes. So Phaser does that in the open source version. So when you download the entire community version, you can just derive out of these classes and use them effectively. So, so getting started. So you have to come out of the comfort zone of Visual Studio. No TeleSense. That's going to be a miss for you guys. I mean, I'll talk with those guys in the late after the session if you guys can point me in a much more intelligent IDEs. There's a bunch of IDEs out there, Visual Studio, Atom, and again, a lot of debates are going about it. Pick one that you guys like, basically. You can just get started. In most cases, most of the plugins are available for everything else, so that's a very good thing. Don't debate over this. It's kind of like it's kind of pointless at this point. So if you're going to use plugins, ESLint, there's a bunch of them out there already, the plugins. This will get you fixed with your syntaxes in most cases. It's almost like typing in a notepad, especially when you're coming from a Visual Studio background. Most of the stuff is already done and it will show you an error right away at that point, right? If you want similar to that, ESLint does like 80% of the job for you guys. HTML5 is not as fancy as HTML4, where you just double click on the HTML5 file and just see the game. It doesn't work that way. We do miss the Flash days, but sadly they're gone. And we are stuck with HTML5. So moving forward, I think the more development we see there, I think the more chances of this platform will get mature. It is mature at this point. So anyways, so you need an Express plugin. There's a bunch of them out there. So these will load a web server right on your IDE and load up your game faster. Again, the first game that we made, the egg drop one, we didn't know that Node.js existed. We knew that there's some technology going on, which was fancy, but then once we figured this one out, it saved us so much time. It was organizing our code, it was recompiling our code like faster than it was hosting us. It was the packages that comes along with this are brilliant. If you're a web developer already, the chances are you wouldn't do without a Node.js or an npm file. There are a couple of other package delivers, but these ones do give us the largest packages delivery services. Ruby on Rails was also awesome, but the problem was we had to learn another new syntax. So we just wanted to switch to JavaScript so that we have everything under control in one platform at that point. So boilerplates to the rescue. So these are basically projects that will get you started right away inside the development process. You can Google, there's tons of them for Phaser and even for other engines. So this is the link that the ones that we derived from. I think it's still under development. I think it was updated almost a month back. So they do come with a web pack. They'll give you a production pack. They'll also give you a sandbox pack where you can debug it much more quicker inside your Chrome browser or a Firefox browser. Browser sync is also awesome, which comes along with it. So the moment you save the project, it will immediately update on the device. So this is like super quick, fast loading. So it will get your iterations much faster. So it was basically easier to set up most of the project. We were just starting on the game. So if you guys want to take a wild guess how long we took the dev time for each Geo game was 2 weeks. It was one programmer, one artist, and we published a game in the Geo platform in within 2 weeks. So this boilerplate saved us a lot of time. Even though we were like complete noobs to this platform, it was kind of like going old school and kind of like addressing game development and how it used to be during the 90s and the 80s, because technology didn't like define any of them. They were like trying out anything that they had and any tools that they had to make the games as quick as possible. There's one more thing, there's TypeScript, which is super close to whatever you guys are used to in your C# and C++, but sadly it lacks a lot of documentation. This is what you'll find in HTML5 when you venture it. There's a lot of projects that's been abandoned since it's open source. So you want to pick one that's been actively being developed right. So the general tips is pick a source code within the Phaser engine. Choose your physics system wisely, because you do box Box 2D also. I think it comes with a little bit of premium price, but if you're going to make a physics heavy game, you might want to consider it right before itself. Like take your device, port it in your device, and then test a bunch of physics systems right there in the beginning itself. Don't go somewhere midway and then figure out, oh my god, this physics system doesn't actually cut out for my game. So do a little bit of research, do a little bit of stress testing on your device. It actually helps. Pick ECMA 6. You don't have to necessarily, you can just start writing your JavaScript by just addressing HTML5 minified code of Phaser, but I wouldn't recommend that, because ECMA 6 kind of like expects you to have a much more organized code throughout. So it will be much more, things will get out of hand way too quickly if your game is expanding. So it might want to like organize code. Unity does makes us lazy whenever it comes to organizing your assets, right? You just keep throwing things in your project and then you organize it, and Unity magically keeps tracks of where your assets are going. So you don't want to do that here. You want to keep your organized stuff right in the beginning itself. It was much of a disciplinary exercise for us whenever we were making HTML5 games. Texture packer, there's a bunch of texture packers already out there. We picked this one. It does come with a price, but the good thing was it did come with a CLI format. So we could probably modify some of the Node.js scripts so that you put on, it was doing automation for us on making sprite sheets when we just ran a server. So immediately it was doing it faster for us. Even if that's the case, I would still recommend it even for your Unity projects, because a CLI interface allows you to organize your sprites way quicker than Unity drag and drops. Take a look at that, it's a pretty neat tool. So if you want to extend your game beyond your browser, right, I highly recommend Cordova and the PhoneGap. PhoneGap comes with Adobe subscription. If you have any Adobe subscription, it's fine. They do provide you, just throw your HTML file, CSS file, and JavaScript file to the PhoneGap one, and that will spit out an APK or an Xcode project. So you can right away test your thing on your devices. We did a port to one of our game to both iOS and Android by just using Geo's code. We did it in a breeze using these ones. These are brilliant tools. You guys need to take a look at that. So the downsides, so it's not all rainbow and sunshine in HTML5. They're emerging platform. The learning curve, it was a little tough for us, especially coming from very traditional programming backgrounds. Obfuscation is still a problem. So if you're in a browser one, All they need to do is like right click, view source, and they can get your JS file right away. Your assets cannot be hidden at this point. Uh, but that being said, it's just one step lesser. If somebody is like hell bent on taking your assets, they can, even if it's a PS3 game or PS4 game, no matter how much you're actually going to hide it. If people are decided to take your assets out, they can. So if that's not going to be a showstopper, if you're going to look at HTML5 and say, oh my God, my code is all being stolen by somebody else, especially in the age of cloning, so many games out there, you don't want your code out there, so you want some security of your code. There are some obfuscation tools already out there. Take a look at that too as well. That being said, and the case study on basic out there should be, if you're going to use an WebGL, you're better off with Unity, basically. If you want to take a venture out on something else on much more lighter, take a Play canvas for that matter. But if you want your footprint to be super small, right, and super specified platforms, I think it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk, and the worst cases, you'll learn something out of this. But still, Miniclip and other emerging platforms still use HTML5 as this one. Whether you like it or not, I think we are all heading on a crossroads of where we merge the web development and the traditional programming are in the crossroads. Whether you like it or not, it's already happening in most cases. Even if you're making a multiplayer game using Unity or even Unreal, writing a backend multiplayer sockets are much more easier using these tools. So the worst cases, you will get comfortable with JavaScript. So whether you like it or not, your path is going to cross JavaScript. So it might take that effort. So this was a kind of a quick talk. I just wanted to have more question sessions at this point.
So I want to give security to my user data, so
Yep.
that no one does the middle attack, and if the hacker captures the data, my user data is leaked, right?
Yep.
So I want to secure it. How can I do it?
There are a couple of ways of actually going about it. Even if you're not a multiplayer code, you can run some server-side logics on your server, and then have a client-side version, and then you can have some sort of cryptography with your data that's been synced between the client and the server, which can protect your design files, which is much more critical than your source files. That's one way of doing it. Other is, if your target platforms are probably a mobile device, I think you're much more safer there, because both Cordova and PhoneGap gives you a much more closed wrapper, and it goes into native code, which makes it harder for them to actually steal your code from there.
I'm making it for web actually.
Okay, then I suppose part of your code should be on the server side. Most of your logic code should be written on the server side, and then it can sync from there, and that gives you security, because they can't run a Node.js server in the back end. So
Yeah, right. Because of this issue, I couldn't even connect my game directly to the Firebase database, because I have to put the server keys, database service account key in the
Yep.
client side, right? So I can do that.
Yep.
If anyone just inspects it's from the
Exactly.
browser, then he'll get the access key, right?
Yep.
So that's the problem actually.
Yes, I think even we are kind of like facing that issue right now, being the code being stolen. But I hope some of our game developers in this room can help us out.
So you mentioned publishing to platforms like Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, and also in Geo. Are you publishing HTML directly?
Yes.
Or are you packaging it into APK and then publishing it?
No, HTML5 directly.
So are these platforms open to anybody, or is there like a developer, are there like, for example, Geo must have a developer program which invited you, right?
Yes,
But
but I think you can just email them, and they're more than happy to get any developers on their platform at this point.
and in terms of revenue monetization on Geo, how does it work? So
They do give a much more compromising package than both Play Store and App Store combined, which worked for us
it's a
brilliantly.
per sale revenue.
Yes. I think they're working on ad-based right now, so you don't have to put your in-app purchases at this point. They are working on an in-app purchases at this point, SDK, so you can buy or change stuff inside your game. They're working on it right now. But that being said, after every session of your game, I think they'll put an ad, and in that ad revenue, they will give you the share.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question.
Okay,
So,
go.
for Snapchat, you mentioned. So, what's the process for pushing a Snapchat game?
Snapchat,
Or Facebook?
Snapchat was incredibly closed. They were like, just give us the HTML file and CSS files and host them in a server, and we'll take care of the rest.
So you need to basically give them a URL.
Yes, that's about it. We just hosted on a VPN and gave them the link, and it worked brilliantly for them. They're incredibly close to it. And then again, I think they run updates on every Snapchat version to make your game appear there.
So another follow-up question. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm monopolizing.
No worries.
So you mentioned about Cordova and PhoneGap. So we've used that technology. What we've seen is that the Cordova base technology itself is about 10 MB. So regardless of your game, we maybe in few KBs, and still you have a 20 MB APK pushing out. In terms of iOS, it's even bigger, 40 MB sometimes, even with very minimal assets. How do we?
The ones that we actually tried out, we tried an iOS one, which came around 18 MB, and the game assets were still like they were coming around like 6 MB at that point. The advantage is Apache is willing to be open source about it, so you can strip the features that you don't want to use at this point. The footprint was relatively smaller than Unity that I tried. I just had a talk with the last Unity speaker, and they told they are working on Canvas at this point as well. Their footprint was, I think, 100 KB or 200 KB. That's what they said. And if Unity is doing that, I mean, that's the point, right? It gets the attention, right? When you have a 10 million user base, Unity is going to want to jump in there as well. But if you want to get a head started, you might well just get your hands dirty with JavaScript, right? Worst case, you learn something.
Thank you so much.
As you said, anybody knows something about. So we just try some little thing to protect the code while packaging with Cordova. So what we do is like simple. There is a hook, encrypt hook.
Okay.
So that your files, JavaScript and other HTML files get encrypted. So it can be hacked again, but it's a little difficult. I mean, like, so normally it will not be straight away pick up from the APK after packaging APK or IPA. It will not be very straightforward for anybody to pick up your code. So try that. There is a hook, Cordova encrypt. So
Thanks, man.
it's available.
I have a question around Snapchat. So you said that obviously Snapchat is a very closed system and so on and so forth. But has Snapchat created a dedicated section for games, much like what Facebook Messenger has? Or is it still featuring somewhere in the scroll or in one of the sections? Because I don't think they have a dedicated section for games yet, right?
No, not really, because how they want to design their game is basically around right after each chat, they want to like have a game run in between and share them between. But I think Facebook Messenger got the idea from Snapchat, but I'm not sure why Snapchat is not more open about it or opening more doors for the developer at this point.
Because I don't think that Snapchat is really like pushing HTML5 action much like a Facebook Messenger is or something, right?
Yep.
So is it still interspersed between conversation, or is there, if you are privy to any plans of Snapchat introducing a new section for games or something of that sort?
No, not at this point. They're still focused on making you look like a dog or like other puppies and like,
Sure.
yeah, that's what works best for them, I suppose.
Thanks.
So sorry again. I mean, since we're talking about Snapchat, WeChat is also a very popular platform for pushing out games, and I think a lot of Chinese and Korean the chat platforms have become like a platform for games as well. Right?
Yep.
So do you see an opportunity there in those markets, being an Indian developer?
I suppose.
Have you explored something on that?
No, not really. We haven't spoke with those guys. We do get a lot of HTML requests here and there. Because one of the few companies that actually takes request of HTML5, but we haven't been contacted by them such. I'm not sure how Snapchat's monetization works at this point because Hellman was working with Snapchat, and we made just the game for Hellman's. Hellman's is the mayonnaise company who makes mayonnaise, and they were interested in making a Snapchat game at that point. So we just partnered with Hellman, and they are in different terms with Snapchat at this point. Thank you.